So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! There has been some breaking news in the NFL world as Chiefs cornerback L'Jarius Sneed has officially been signed to the franchise tag and is actively seeking a trade within the NFL. The Chiefs have been kind of a big story this offseason as the reigning Super Bowl champions and how they're going to manage their cap space and which superstar they're unfortunately going to have to let go. For a long time, it was a big question between are they going to keep their great cornerback, one in L'Jarius Sneed, or their all-pro defensive tackle in Chris Jones. With the franchise tagging of L'Jarius Sneed, it seems as though they will go the way of Chris Jones in keeping their all-pro defensive tackle, and it seems as though they are allowing L'Jarius Sneed to seek out a trade within the NFL to find his next home. And of course, that leads a lot of Lions fans to saying, hey, we could be that next home. So today we're going to take a look at L'Jarius Sneed. We're going to take a look at whether or not he fits the Detroit Lions, whether or not it would be smart for the Lions to go get him, what the cost may end up being to bring in the cornerback one. So with all of that being said, let's get right on into L'Jarius Sneed, taking a look at his career so far in the NFL. Now, L'Jarius Sneed has played 4 seasons with the Kansas City Chiefs, has won 2 Super Bowls, and been incredibly productive along the way. L'Jarius Sneed in his 4 years of NFL play has 303 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, 10 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and 6.5 sacks. Last season with the Kansas City Chiefs throughout the regular season, L'Jarius Sneed allowed a 51% completion percentage on over 100 targets through the air, allowed just 468 yards, 0 touchdowns, and walked away with 2 interceptions. He was very easily the Chiefs' #1 cornerback and arguably was a top 5 cornerback in the NFL last year. He doesn't have the big name like Pat Surtain or Sauce Gardner. He's not a guy that is necessarily the household name, but statistically and his play on the field would actually tell you that he is, in fact, a top 5 cornerback in the league. He is phenomenal in man-on-man, played boundary really for the first time in his career last year, and of course, as we just said, looked really, really good doing it. Now, taking a look at L'Jarius Sneed, I think he fits what the Detroit Lions want in a cornerback pretty much ideally, right? He is a cornerback that'll tackle. He is physical at the line of scrimmage. He excels in man coverage. He's going to get his hands on the football. If you catch the football on L'Jarius Sneed, you better have a tight grip on that thing because he is punching for the football. He's trying to force turnovers. He's trying to get the football out. He's trying to put it on the ground. And he is a player that does it almost better than any other cornerback in the NFL. He would easily slide in as the Detroit Lions cornerback when he's got the long speed. He's gone one-on-one with wide receiver ones all season last year. And again, on 101 targets, L'Jarius Sneed allowed just 468 yards and did not allow a touchdown at all last season. He was an elite lockdown coverage cornerback. There were clips, of course, of him in the playoffs versus Tyreek Hill, jamming him at the line, physically putting Tyreek Hill on the ground. I mean, week after week after week, this guy would match up. He would follow #1 wide receivers and almost single-handedly eliminate them from the game. Now, there was a press conference where the Lions had some of their coaches speak, and their new defensive backs coach spoke very highly about cornerbacks and their ability to tackle, going as far to say, if you do not tackle, you will not play. And I think L'Jarius Sneed is the ideal cornerback for his system and for the cornerback that he wants to bring into the team. He wants guys that'll tackle. He wants guys that can be physical. He wants guys that can play a physical style of football. And that is exactly the game L'Jarius Sneed plays. I think a cornerback duo of him and Cam Sutton would be really, really good with Brian Branch in the slot All three of those guys are pretty good in coverage. All three of those guys tackle, and all three of those guys, I think, fit what the new cornerbacks coach would want in Detroit. Now, taking a look at some of the other top cornerback trades over the last couple of years, there are really two cornerbacks over the last 5 to 6 years that stand out as massive trades for cornerback ones, for alpha cornerbacks that are having great careers and great seasons. And this is the compensation that they got. Last offseason, Jalen Ramsey was traded from the LA Rams to the Miami Dolphins. The 29-year-old cornerback was not having his greatest year of an NFL career, but was still easily a top 10 cornerback in the NFL and was projected to be one of the highest trade play was projected to be one of the best players on the market last offseason. Jalen Ramsey got traded to the Miami Dolphins for just a third-round pick along with backup tight end Hunter Long. Not a massive trade package, right? Miami knew they were going to have to pay him, so the trade package went down a little bit, and they were able to get a all-pro cornerback, arguably the best cornerback in the NFL over the last couple of seasons at that point, for a third-round pick and a backup tight end. Now, another cornerback that was traded relatively recently was actually a cornerback from the Lions. When Matt Patricia took over as the head coach for the Detroit Lions, he ended up trading Darius Slay to the Philadelphia Eagles, a 29-year-old cornerback, 28-year-old cornerback who was an all-pro at the time, who was an easily top 5 cornerback in the NFL. And he traded Darius Slay away for a third-round pick and a fifth-round selection. Now, I think L'Jarius Sneed is right up there with Darius Slay when he left Detroit, as far as an age thing, as far as a production value, as far as just an overall value for a football team. I think he's right up there with Darius Slay, who got all pro nods with his final full season with the Detroit Lions. And of course, Darius Slay went on to be a great cornerback for a long time and is still a great cornerback in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think a very fair projected trade for L'Jarius Sneed would be a third overall pick as well as a 2025 fifth-round pick. The Detroit Lions take on that $19.8 million cap hit this season due to the franchise tag, and they extend him to a long-term contract. But taking a look at what, Jalen Ramsey got for the Rams, taking a look at what Darius Slay got for the Detroit Lions, a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick seems to be relatively what teams seem to think their cornerbacks are worth. And knowing that they're not keeping L'Jarius Sneed long-term, this isn't going to be a first-round pick situation, right? There were a lot of people saying that L'Jarius might cost a high second, that he might even cost a first-round pick. I truly don't think that's going to be the case. This is a very similar situation to what happened with Jalen Ramsey, where, yeah, they know that L'Jarius Sneed, mostly for financial reasons, isn't going to be a long-term option for them. He's not going to be a Chief long-term and likely won't be a Chief for the remainder of his career, right? There's a good chance that L'Jarius Sneed isn't a Chief at all by the time the draft rolls around, let alone training camp. So if you know he's not going to be a Chief and everybody else knows he's not going to be a Chief, the bargaining power isn't necessarily that high, right? I think it is right around that Jalen Ramsey terms. And a lot of people are going to say, yeah, but Jalen Ramsey got to pick his team and Jalen Ramsey got to decide where he went, so it drove down the value of what the Rams could get for him. I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think the Rams would have traded Jalen Ramsey if they didn't feel like they were getting fair compensation. And I think this is fair compensation for L'Jarius Sneed. The Chiefs are able to offload a big-time contract. They're able to offload $20 million for L'Jarius Sneed. And in return, they get a top 100 pick as well as a fifth-round pick in next year's draft. I think it's very fair value. I think it's fair value for the Detroit Lions. Again, essentially turning TJ Hawkinson into Sam Laporta for that second-round pick and L'Jarius Sneed. That's a phenomenal trade by Brad Holmes, and that turns out to be a great pickup for the Lions. I think this trade makes a lot of sense for the Lions. The Lions need a cornerback one. L'Jarius Sneed is a cornerback one on the boundary. He has boundary experience. He has proven success on the boundary, and has proven success against elite wide receiver ones. It fills a need for the Detroit Lions. It fills a need for the Kansas City Chiefs. Both teams, I think, give up and receive fair compensation for a player of L'Jarius' standards. And of course, the fact that the Lions have to sign him also drives down the price a little bit. I think the Detroit Lions, after making this trade, will give L'Jarius a 3-year, $50 million contract to be the cornerback one. That is roughly $15 to $16 million a season over the 3 years, of course, plus the franchise tag would still take effect, meaning L'Jarius Sneed would be with the Detroit Lions through 2029, putting him at age, I believe, 29 at the end of that contract. The Lions have a ton of money going forward. Of course, they have Penei Sewell and Aiden Hutchinson and Amon-Ra St. Brown coming up. They have, medium-sized contracts like Ifiatu and Aleem McNeil coming up, but I do think they can afford this contract. I think Brad Holmes is very, very good with the cap space. He was phenomenal last year with it. I think he can work around it. He has $60 million to work with this year, so he's got quite a bit of money to play with. And I think a cornerback duo or a cornerback trio even of L'Jarius Sneed, Cam Sutton, and Brian Branch would make the Lions secondary really strong with Kirby Joseph and Ifiatu Melifonwu as the safeties over the top. That's a really strong secondary. And of course, you need to work on the depth a little bit. After that, your cornerback four currently on the roster is Stephen Gilmore and Chase Lucas. So you can go out and draft a guy in the middling rounds, but that's a really good secondary. That is a really talented secondary. And with a new defensive backs coach, hopefully with a little bit of added pressure throughout the draft, I think the Lions can turn this defense into a really good unit. I think the cornerback one they need is L'Jarius Sneed. I think that, obviously they could go through the draft. They could try to go through free agency. There is not a free agent cornerback better than L'Jarius Sneed. There is not a cornerback that's going to be drafted, I think, has the immediate impact of L'Jarius Sneed. I think he is the best option from a talent perspective. And I think giving up a 3rd and a 5th round pick is very much worth what the Lions would have to give up in order to acquire the Pro Bowl cornerback. But with all of that being said, that is my personal opinion. Of course, let me know down in the comments below what you think about it. Would you trade for L'Jarius Sneed if you were Brett Holmes? Would you look into it? What's the price you'd be willing to pay to bring in a potential future long-term cornerback one? I'd be very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.